Please, housekeeper. I've invited some celebrity friends, so make sure to entertain them properly." Thus, my mother-in-law, who fancies herself a celebrity, declared boldly. She spoke condescendingly, looking down on me. Neither this high-rise apartment nor the tea set my mother-in-law proudly shows off actually belong to her. My sweet, somewhat oblivious husband doesn't seem to notice his mother's hidden intentions. I am exhausted from being manipulated by my mother-in-law's whims and have no choice but to comply. Why is she here? As I brought tea and snacks, the friends my mother-in-law was boasting about started to tremble. While my mother-in-law was confused, we started having fun. She was taken aback by my unexpected identity, and the situation changed dramatically as my husband started to talk calmly. And then, a surprising person delivered a decisive blow to crush my mother-in-law. Such a development was astonishing. Even if I could go back in time and relive this day, I couldn't have predicted it. My name is Teresa Morris, and I am 45 years old. I've been married to my husband, Stanley, for 19 years. We have recently moved into a new high-rise apartment. After settling in from the move, we are enjoying our new life. With our child going to university and moving out, we have moved into a perfectly sized apartment for the two of us. The wonderful high-rise apartment we worked hard to obtain is a quiet, sunny, and comfortable place that meets our expectations. We bought smaller furniture than before and the stylish dinnerware we always wanted. This space, gradually changing to my preferences, is truly comforting. However, a certain phone call disrupted these fulfilling days. "Hello, Teresa. Congratulations on moving into the high-rise apartment. I think we should celebrate immediately, so I will visit you soon." My mother-in-law, who lives with my husband's sister and her husband, heard about the move and insisted on visiting us. I managed to respond politely, but I was shocked inside. This mother-in-law is a difficult person to deal with. It's more about her personality than the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. She talks about everything as if it's her own accomplishment and boasts about it everywhere. I don't really like that personality. I also don't like her attitude of always trying to be superior and talking down to others. It's rare to see a good side of Mom, celebrating our move like this. Stanley, being straightforward, seems to believe she is genuinely celebrating. I took a deep breath. If I can just endure for a short while, everything should go smoothly. I waited for my mother-in-law to arrive, hoping everything would go well. Wow, what a lovely apartment. My mother-in-law arrived excited like a child. The entrance of this residence has a system where visitors call residents using an intercom and unlock the door remotely. I was surprised by my mother-in-law's action of moving close to the intercom lens, but it feels good to see someone happy. Just when I thought things might finally go well this time, she suddenly suggested, "Let's have dinner delivered or go out. I'm craving steak." It's 10 a.m. now. It's a bit premature to be discussing dinner plans, although lunch would be more reasonable. It seems my mother-in-law intends to stay here at least until tonight. Hoping she doesn't plan to stay overnight, my expression stiffens with worry. I haven't heard about an overnight stay, so I think she'll leave at a reasonable time. But just in case, she can use the spare bedding for kids. Stanley is innocent and charming, but surprisingly oblivious to malice. Even if others have bad intentions, he often fails to grasp the true meaning and just smiles. Being someone who worries a lot myself, I am sometimes amazed by his nature, which I also find charming. However, this situation feels difficult. Even if my mother-in-law acts arrogantly again, Stanley will likely go through it without much thought. And the problem always circles back to her. For him, she is the mother he grew up with until adulthood. Unless I express my discomfort, I shouldn't expect him to intervene. My mother-in-law appeared, pulling along her carry-on suitcase. Claiming it as a celebration, she handed over a box of sweets worth about $10. As I prepared the tea and opened the box, my mother-in-law started on the sweets before us. "Isn't it amazing? Stanley is really commendable. To be able to buy such a wonderful place, I'm so proud," she boasted, lifting her chin and flaring her nostrils. It was the perfect boastful expression. If it were an audition for the role of the evil mother in Cinderella, she would undoubtedly pass. "Actually, we haven't bought it. We could rent this place thanks to Teresa," Stanley replied, tilting his head. His words were true. This high-rise apartment is a rental. "Oh, how wonderful of you, Stanley, to give the credit to Teresa. Now, Teresa, please take out the trash." While praising her son, my mother-in-law then gave me a cold look. She seemed to have ordered me to deal with the scattered food wrappers on the table. Reluctantly, I gathered the trash and disposed of it. The trash can was in plain sight. She could have taken care of it herself, I thought to myself. At least she should have asked, "Could you take this out?" But being ordered around was unexpected. Afterward, my mother-in-law continued to give me frequent commands. "Fetch this, organize that," treating me as if I were a servant. Initially, I complied and prepared the meal as she requested, but her demands only grew more unreasonable. "This stir-fry is too oily and messy. What about cleaning? I haven't seen you clean once, even though you've been here all morning. You're practically like a housekeeper in this house, so work properly." Usually cleaning is a household chore I enjoy. However, when my mother-in-law visits, it doesn't go that way and my dissatisfaction only increases. I felt as if I was being treated like a real housekeeper. Though I decided to argue back, I ultimately held back. This situation should end soon. I thought it wise to avoid conflict and not waste unnecessary energy. My mother-in-law rarely shows this attitude in front of Stanley. When he is around, she sweetly praises him and acts cheerfully. Her hypocritical behavior is exasperating. However, the situation worsened after dinner. My mother-in-law declared that she would stay the night. Stanley showed a serious expression for a moment, then whispered to me quietly, "Sorry, Teresa. I'll talk to her later. Can you just bear with it for tonight?" When Stanley gives me that pleading look, I find it hard to resist. Reluctantly, I began to prepare the bedroom quietly. While I was setting up an airbed in the room with wooden floors, my mother-in-law suddenly appeared right beside me. An airbed directly on the floor. "Don't you have a mattress? The stores are still open, so go buy one quickly," she said in a nasty tone, very different from how she speaks around Stanley. This situation was really upsetting, but I responded in as gentle a voice as I could manage. "It's just for tonight. Could you please bear with it? We only have airbeds in our house," I said with a smile, though her attitude remained unchanged. She glared at me coldly. As I wondered how uncomfortable she felt about sleeping on an airbed, she huffed in annoyance and said, "Planning to kick me out after just one day? I'm staying here for a few days. I want to mingle with the neighborhood celebrities." I stood there with wide eyes in surprise, tried to lighten the mood with a forced smile, and quickly went to Stanley. "Hey, your mother is saying she'll stay for a few days. Can you ask her to go out for a bit because of some work, or at least to keep it down a little?" Our eyes met, and he too looked a bit shocked. I felt overwhelmed, needing to protect my alone time while my mother-in-law disrupted my workflow. Stanley firmly nodded and cautioned her, "If you are staying, please do not disturb Teresa. She needs to concentrate on her work. It's important for her. Please enjoy shopping or walking outside during the day." Despite her cheerful okay, her high energy made me anxious. I hoped she wouldn't cause any more trouble. Yet her inconsiderate behavior continued unabated, especially with the laundry. She demanded it be done nightly, and would be upset if it wasn't washed by morning. The futility of washing her underwear while considering the neighbors left me feeling hollow. "Make sure to wash it in a laundry bag. These are delicate clothes," she demanded sternly. I complied, soon realizing there was nothing special about these garments that required such care. Even during the promised daytime hours, she was a constant disruption. Instead of going out, I was sent on errands by her demands. "I told you to buy proper juice. What's this sugar-filled drink? It's unbelievable you'd choose anything other than 100% fruit juice for me," she complained, knocking a plastic bottle off the table. The sound of liquid splashing followed. Despite my quick shopping, I was met with such treatment. Her pressure intensified. "Hurry up and buy a new one. A daughter-in-law is just like a housekeeper. How incompetent can you be? How many times do I have to tell you? You're going to get yourself thrown out," she exclaimed. Silently, I turned on my computer. I felt it was impossible to continue dealing with her. "Sorry, but I have work that I must finish. There's a deli nearby, so please choose whatever you like yourself," I suggested. She left the house grumbling, displaying her displeasure. Finally alone, I began to calm down in the quiet environment. How many more days will my mother-in-law stay? I told myself to endure. However, when she returned, she brought not the juice I expected, but a bottle of wine. I was a little surprised, but I could still tolerate her drinking alcohol. Mother-in-law, if you're going to enjoy some wine, please have this as well. It's a very tasty cheese that Stanley brought back from his business trip. Offering the valuable cheese noticeably improved her attitude. Incredibly, after a week, she showed no signs of leaving and even started inviting neighbors without asking. She would stop in front of the elevator and talk to anyone who passed by. When Stanley told me about the situation, I didn't know how to handle the embarrassment. I told her to stop waiting around, but she's eager to get close to the celebrities. We might need to take a firm stance on this situation, Stanley said with a sigh. Both of us are nearing our limits. On the 9th day of her stay, she brought guests without notice. It seemed she was particularly focused on a sophisticated and affluent family, the Butlers. My mother-in-law was especially friendly with Mrs. Butler, walking around arm in arm. I learned her name was Jeanette from my mother-in-law's calls, but they were all strangers to me. I was in my loungewear and hurried to the kitchen to escape, leaving Stanley to handle it. Mom is sucking up to the Butlers, pretending to be friends with celebrities. She talks as if she's the one who rented this high-rise apartment. I wish she'd be more modest, Stanley said, returning to the kitchen with a slumped shoulder. Moreover, she had declared she was going to throw a party. Why is she here? When I appeared with tea and snacks, Jeanette began to tremble. At that moment, I could see her family also shaking their hands excitedly. My mother-in-law was confused to see her celebrity friend lose color and look shocked. You surprised me. Could it be, Iris? I always read your blog and I'm a huge fan. I also watch your videos. Jeanette stood up and eagerly reached out for a handshake. The name she called out was the online nickname I use. The blog and videos she mentioned are my hobbies and they also connect to my work. The Butler family were my readers. Since I showed my face online, they recognized me immediately. My mother-in-law, who isn't familiar with the internet, was confused even after hearing the handle. I'm so pleased. Thank you for always reading. With those words, my spirits lifted and I showed a broad smile. Indeed, my blog is well regarded, particularly among homemakers. I occasionally get recognized when I'm out, but I never expected to have fans in my own high-rise apartment. That's amazing, truly wonderful. Leaving my bewildered mother-in-law aside, Jeanette exploded with joy. I kept a calm face and reassured Jeanette to relax. Seeing her this happy, I decided to carefully make the tea for everyone to enjoy. I also served some selected dried fruits and premium jelly along with baked treats. Jeanette's delightful cannolis were added to the table as well. With a table overflowing with luxurious sweets, the atmosphere quickly brightened. My internet-averse mother-in-law couldn't grasp what was happening, and we left her behind as we enjoyed ourselves. Stanley noticed the change in the atmosphere and joined us with a smile. I saw the announcement that you couldn't stream this week because of a visitor, and I was really disappointed. Wait, is your mother-in-law the visitor? If so, why couldn't you stream? She's an adult, she should be able to keep quiet until the streaming is over. I thought maybe you had small children. When Jeanette said this, the Butler family couldn't help but laugh. Feeling the astonished stares around her, my mother-in-law blushed and looked down in embarrassment. In fact, I am a popular homemaker blogger who shares ideas on housekeeping and organizing tips. I have a wide range of support across generations, and recently, I've also been doing live streams on social media to interact directly with readers. Unfortunately, due to my mother-in-law's frequent interruptions, I was unable to conduct the planned live stream. My mother-in-law is quite unfamiliar with digital technology, and it's very unlikely she would stumble upon my social media. Given this, I posted rather modestly and vaguely on social media. I've had a visitor staying over, and it has made it impossible to proceed with the planned streaming. I'm so sorry to everyone who is waiting. My guest needs my assistance, and I'd get scolded otherwise. I didn't mention my mother-in-law by name and made sure to keep the tone light so as not to paint her as the villain completely. However, it's clear what impression Jeanette and others might have from this situation and the post. Next, it was Stanley who spoke. I see the Butler family also reads Teresa's blog. Thank you very much. Please look forward to the book she will soon publish, which will be released by the publishing company I work for." My mother-in-law stared at Stanley in surprise. She was unaware of this discussion. I hadn't told my mother-in-law about this plan either, as she had previously taken my success as a boast and reacted unpleasantly. So I did not mention it this time. Even if my mother-in-law accidentally found out, I decided there was no need to tell her myself and unnecessarily upset her. "Actually, I'm preparing to publish a book right now. I've told Mom to not disturb Teresa since she's busy. Interfering with a live stream is something she shouldn't do. If Teresa's book gets delayed, I'll also be blamed. After all, I'm the person in charge of this project." My mother-in-law murmured a small "e" in surprise. She probably never imagined I was working together with my husband on this. Then, Stanley innocently began talking about my mother-in-law's behavior. Why not include that funny thing Mom said yesterday as a family story in the book, like when she ate the minestrone Teresa made and said, "This ratatouille is sour. It must be spoiled. She really is a natural, isn't she?" The Butler family burst out laughing at that story. I hid a wry smile and remained silent. I felt it wasn't appropriate to laugh. However, Stanley showed no signs of stopping. "Just because she's staying in a high-rise apartment, she talks as if she's a celebrity herself. She was just visiting, but kept saying, 'I'm a celebrity, so I must indulge,' and drank wine. But it was just wine from the deli. Isn't that kind of ordinary?" I was debating whether to point that out. I thought about saying it was a somewhat endearing story, but when I saw my mother-in-law's face turning red with anger, I swallowed my words. The story might have been too trivial, as the Butler family's reaction was lukewarm. Jeanette and her family wore subtle smiles and looked back and forth between my husband and my mother-in-law. "Shall we change the subject? Jeanette, I see you're using that tote bag." I switched to another topic. The bag Jeanette was using was one I had designed for a collaboration with a magazine. As we touched on the new topic, Jeanette's face lit up. "Yes, the bag designed by Iris is very practical and one of my favorites. The size of the interior pockets is perfect, and it has a sturdy, wide base which makes it extremely convenient. In fact, I have 2 more of the same at home." My mother-in-law was now quiet and didn't say a word. Perhaps she didn't want to make a bad impression on the affluent family she liked. Her silence was actually a relief. The rest of the tea party proceeded in a very harmonious atmosphere. We had just moved to this area and were unfamiliar with the local geography, but the Butler family, having lived here for years, shared many recommendations for shops and scenic places. We exchanged a lot of information and had a meaningful time. Actually, I have other friends who read Iris's blog too. Would you like to join us for a meal next time? Jeanette made a delightful proposal. This might help build a good relationship with our neighbors moving forward. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law glared at me with a face filled with anger and gritted her teeth. It seemed she was upset that I was becoming close with the people she liked to refer to as her celebrity friends. Other people. Are they wealthy? Such people are greedy and should be looked down upon. They have no class anyway. My mother-in-law suddenly erupted in anger. How unbecoming it is to hurl baseless accusations. It was me who was invited, not her, so her interjections are unnecessary. And to speak rudely about the guests she invited, what kind of thinking is that? I understand feeling alienated might make her angry, but largely it's her own doing. I didn't tell her about my blog in advance because I thought it would upset her. Her difficulty with the internet stems from her refusal to learn. If she's not qualified to mingle with the real elite, she should accept that reality. "I'm sorry, please don't mind her." The contrast between my actions and my mother-in-law seemed to further highlight her erratic behavior. At that moment, Stanley joined the conversation with a relaxed tone. "I don't care much about family backgrounds, but Teresa's lineage is quite renowned. One of your ancestors appeared in a recent drama, didn't he?" "Yes, the era he lived in is often depicted." When I replied lightly, my mother-in-law looked taken aback, and the Butler family murmured among themselves. I seldom talk about it, but actually one of my ancestors was a notable politician who left a mark on history. However, by the time of my great-grandparents, our family had become commoners. When Stanley mentioned my ancestor, the Butler family nodded with interest. It seems my family name is somewhat known. My mother-in-law, not well versed in history, didn't recognize the name. As I garnered attention, my mother-in-law turned red with anger and began to tremble. This was not embarrassment but anger. About an hour later, the Butler family prepared to leave. Jeanette came up to me and said, "It must be tough, but your husband is as kind and charming as you write about in your blog. Don't let your mother-in-law get to you." I simply replied, "Thank you," and smiled as I saw them off. As the door closed, my mother-in-law's dissatisfaction erupted suddenly. "Don't forget, it's because of Stanley that you can live in this house. The one with the higher income holds the power. You are in a position of being supported, so you should be more humble. Stanley, stop smiling and properly educate your rude wife." Her face twisted in frustration, making her appear older than she actually was. Her shouting was so unpleasant, I worried it could be heard outside the door. At that moment, Stanley confronted her with an unprecedented seriousness. I realized something then. It was the first time my mother-in-law had shown her true nature in front of her son. I strongly hoped that Stanley would stand up for me. "Mom, you're wrong. We can live here thanks to Teresa. I've told you before, all the rent for this house is paid by Teresa. True, I cover our living expenses, but, in fact, Teresa now earns much more than I do. I write a blog and magazine columns, and fortunately I have a steady income. The collaborative products and streaming are going well, bringing in good results. Though freelancing has its instabilities recently, it's a fact that sometimes I earn more than Stanley." The topic was commonplace, but there was an exceptional chill in Stanley's voice and expression. While internally praising him for firmly standing by my side, I also added, "I apologize, I hadn't discussed this with you. I'm truly sorry for earning so much. Moreover, such behavior in front of our guests lacks decorum. It's really unfortunate." I no longer felt the need to force a smile. My mother-in-law was unsettled, her eyes darting around restlessly. Looking up, then down at me, and finally, she sharply turned her gaze to Stanley and raised her voice. "Why are you losing to such a woman? How much do you earn? And what about your father's inheritance? If you include that, surely you must be." Stanley interrupted her. "Father's inheritance? What are you talking about, Mom? You took half of it, and there's hardly anything left of the other half, is there?" Stanley chuckled, but both my mother-in-law and I were left with our mouths agape. I wasn't aware of the specific amount of my father-in-law's estate. I know she received it, but that was my husband's personal asset, and it was not my place to comment. So, even when I heard it was all spent, I didn't know how much it was. Glancing at my mother-in-law's face, I noticed she had gone remarkably pale. I assumed it must have been a significant amount. "When you came to us saying you couldn't pay your losses at the casino and needed help, I paid several times, didn't I? All that money was spent on that. It was money inherited from Dad. But you used it just because it was there. Married couples' assets aren't meant to be used like that." Hearing this, I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. I had never imagined my mother-in-law could be so wasteful. Sensing my distress, Stanley continued calmly, "As I just explained, the inheritance is gone, so we can't make any more payments. You'll have to manage on your own from now on." My mother-in-law was astonished. From her reaction, I realized she was still engaging in the same behaviors. Given that my mother-in-law is already in her late 60s, saying, "You still look so young and lovely," might be too sarcastic. "There's nothing to be done, there's no money left. Teresa, say something." I simply shook my head in silence. Disappointed, my mother-in-law left our home. After she was gone, I approached Stanley and asked him to ensure she doesn't visit for a while. Despite her being his mother, Stanley showed understanding without any reluctance and contacted her right away. "What happened this time was too much. You treated Teresa like she was just a housekeeper. And importantly, Mom, don't come to this high-rise apartment anymore. People around us are giving cold stares. I don't want you to embarrass us in our new home." I almost blurted out that I wanted her banned outright, but thinking that her absence would spare us further distress, I swallowed my words. I was relieved that Stanley had communicated it clearly. Additionally, on Stanley's advice, I made a call to a trusted ally. That person is Stanley's older sister, my sister-in-law, Katie. Katie and I get along very well. When I received the news that my mother-in-law was coming to visit, I immediately informed Katie. Katie and her husband currently live with my mother-in-law. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law, having become alone, asked to move in with them. They agreed since they have a house with spare rooms now that their children have moved out. Katie had asked me to inform her immediately if her mother caused any problems. It seems my mother-in-law had previously caused issues even at Katie's home. She has been telling people that the house she lives in with them is her own, which infuriated her real daughter. Please do not talk about the house my husband and I worked hard for as if it's yours. Our neighbors say, nice of your parents to build you a house, consider our position. We are still paying off the mortgage. Katie strongly reprimanded her, clearly displeased by her mother's behavior. My mother-in-law has a history of exaggerating how much she sacrificed in raising her children, creating fictional difficult episodes and spreading them around. This has often led to unnecessary embarrassment, and Katie has been feeling frustrated about this for a long time. Katie and her husband bought their house with a 20-year mortgage and are still making payments. It's understandable that they would feel angry about their efforts being misrepresented. If she causes any more problems, we will end this living arrangement. I told her to live on her pension. Thanks for letting us know. If she comes back tonight, it'll be a sleepless night for us. We'll be prepared. True to her word, the next day my mother-in-law was kicked out and came crying to us. She had been carrying the same suitcase since yesterday, wearing the same clothes she had left in the day before. After being scolded by Katie and her husband, she returned to us in the same outfit. When I saw her through the intercom, she looked utterly exhausted, making me wonder if we should at least let her stay for the night. I suggested this to Stanley, but he chuckled and responded, "No way. Mom, didn't I tell you not to come here anymore? Just because Katie kicked you out doesn't change anything. You can't fool us. You just want to get back into our house, right? No, you need to leave." Stanley promptly ended the intercom call without listening to any of her excuses. I was shocked by the scene, grateful yet amazed at Stanley. He was usually so naive and oblivious for the 45 years we'd been together, especially given how busy we were raising our kids. Perhaps the home environment required such obliviousness for anyone to survive. It's unfortunate that even the long years we spent together couldn't improve this, but now, after our children have left home, we are living alone together for the first time in 19 years. It's my turn to re-educate my husband. Since I made that decision 6 months ago, every day has been joyful. As the butlers spread the word, we have been receiving greetings from our neighbors. Some are even checking out my blog and streams, and while it's a bit embarrassing, it's fun to see the community grow. Our home life has stabilized too. Sometimes my husband, like a big child, brings a delightful charm to our household. Though we sometimes feel the loneliness of our children having moved out, our time together as a couple is fulfilling in its own way. Currently, my mother-in-law lives alone in a small apartment. Had she made different choices, she might have been able to spend her twilight years peacefully surrounded by family, but instead she is alone. It seems she can no longer visit the casino she once frequented, as neither my husband nor my sister-in-law, Katie, will be helping her anymore. Those places will not welcome her either. Having time to freely engage in hobbies and work is something I'm grateful for. However, recently I've begun to harbor some suspicions about my husband. It's possible that he isn't just naturally naive, but that some of his actions are calculated. When I questioned Katie about my mother-in-law's whereabouts, which supposedly had been arranged, it was revealed that my husband had arranged her living situation. He didn't provide financial support, but did help with finding her a place to live. The contract included a clause that stated there wouldn't be any contact with her except for hospital visits or a family funeral. I couldn't hide my surprise and confusion upon learning this fact. Katie then deepened the discussion, saying Stanley is actually quite calculating. He may look like an innocent angel on the outside, but inside he's really shrewd. This analogy was so unique I almost missed it, but it's an intriguing notion. When my mother-in-law accumulated debts at the casino in the past, Stanley was furious and immediately started seeking legal advice. Publicly, he claimed it was to keep the family from trouble, but his real goal was to shut down the shop. This new understanding of my husband's character adds a complex layer to how I see him and our relationship moving forward. It appears that he was investigating and reporting illegal activities like providing alcohol to minors. By bringing these issues to light, he aimed for his mother to lose credibility with the establishments and be denied entry. I've never seen this calculating side of my husband. Could it be that he's not really naive but has been pretending all this time? The thought that he might have maintained this act for 19 years is frightening. It might not be an act. I've heard he really likes your resilience, Teresa. Maybe he's just being indulgent. Unexpectedly, I came to understand more about his fondness for me. Thinking about it this way, his adorable, sleepy bear-like demeanor might just be him showing affection towards me. However, if this behavior is unconscious, then it isn't an act but genuine affection. In any case, I look forward to a worry-free life with him from now on. I'm excited to live a future that feels true to myself,